Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about the 4 best feels for more hip rotation. Hey guys, Eric here at the Bethlehem Golf Club. I want to talk to you today about the 4 best feels for more hip rotation. Now, before we dive in, 2 things I want to talk to you about. We have launched all of our 2-day full immersion golf schools here at the Bethlehem Golf Club. Really is the best way I know how to take your golf game to the next level. 2 full days here going through everything we could imagine in your golf game. If you guys are interested in coming to Bethlehem, PA or learning more, we will put the link in the description down below. Now, if you can't come see us in person, that's why we built out CogornoGolf.com, our membership site, our community. On there, we have a lot of different quick fix sections. We have guided courses, really guided step-by-step learning to take you from where you are to that next level. Also, we have our Facebook community where you can post your own swings, get feedback from myself and other members of the community. Really join us and all of us trying to get better together. We'd love to see you guys there. We'll also put the link in the description down below for Cogorno Golf. Now, I want to talk today about the 4 best feels for more hip rotation. And when we're talking about hip rotation and improving or increasing hip rotation, we're typically mainly talking about hip or pelvis rotation during the downswing, or how open or closed you are relative to a target line. Now, the end goal with this one's fairly straightforward, and that is the more open we can get our hips or our pelvis relative to the target at the moment of impact or during the entire downswing, the greater chance of us hitting good shots, right? There's a 1-to-1 correlation amongst a player's ability across the board when you measure it with how much hip rotation they have and their quality of strike or quality of player. And that is, again, the more hip rotation you have, better ball striking, better speed, better contact, better club face control, et cetera, et cetera. So if we kind of go through this video assuming that more hip rotation is good, let's talk about the 4 best feels on how to do this. Obviously, there's a lot of different drills. I want to focus today on the feels. And what I want to focus on specifically are a couple different body segments. Right hip feels, left hip feels, left knee feels, and left foot feels. All of them designed to increase your overall rotation. Now, before we dive into what those feels are, one point I want to make here is what I found is over time, there's action-reaction we always talk about, right? Cause and effect. And that is, I've seen players who free their hips up during the backswing or free their pelvis motion up have a better chance of having more rotation during the downswing. And I say that because during these drills, I'm going to give you feels to increase the pelvis or hip rotation, both really on the way back to free yourself up to rotate more on the way down. That's the general idea here. So let's talk about these 4 feels. Now, feel number 1 is going to be what the right hip does during the backswing and downswing. So if I take my normal setup position, feel number 1 is going to be getting a sensation of the right hip working back behind you and then working forward in front of you. Nothing more complicated than that to start, just getting the right hip back and the right hip forward. A lot of people, when talking about hip rotation, really get lead side dominant and they focus on their left side. And that's good and that can work, and we're going to do that as well. But understanding there's also a right side to this. And if you're trying to increase your hip rotation during the downswing, you can very well feel right side rotation. So feel number 1 is no more complicated than that. We're going to get our right hip working back behind us during the backswing and then back in front of us on the way down and into the follow through. So let's go ahead and demonstrate what that looks like. Feel number 1, right hip behind us, right hip through. And again, the goal being more rotation. Now, this, like anything else, I would recommend doing with feedback, not just simply guessing, hey, is this working? Am I getting more rotation or not? I would videotape your swing, assuming you want to increase your hip rotation, which I'm saying more or less across the board is a good thing. And then you go ahead and do these feels. You record yourself, right, with a phone or something like a live view, and you see how much rotation you actually have and you adjust your feels accordingly. But this could be something simple to start with. One more time, right hip goes back and right hip goes forward. And that could be part number 1 of you adding rotation. Now, when you're feeling the right hip back and forward, the right hip goes behind you. I don't want a lot of motion this way. I want your right hip to go pretty much behind you, create a little bit of space, and then I want it to go more or less straight forward. Now, of course, there's going to be a little bit of natural shifting motion, but I want you to feel as though the hip works straight forward here in the initial downswing, and then you're trying to get your pocket or your right hip fully turned and pointed at the target in your finish position. If I make a follow through, my right hip stalls out and points too far to the right, that would be not as much rotation. Right hip back, right hip forward, and then right hip all the way towards the target. That would be feel number one. Let's talk about the next feel and get into the left side feels. Okay, feel number two here, instead of thinking about the right hip, has to do with the left hip. And now, keeping in mind the pelvis or the right side of the hip and the left side of the hip aren't really independent, they work together. That is, if my right hip goes back behind me, that means my left hip would need to do what? When I make a backswing motion, if my right hip goes back, my left hip comes forward, right? And then the opposite during my downswing. If my right hip comes forward, that means my left hip has to come back. So what do we want to feel with the left hip? We want to feel during the backswing, the left hip works in, and then to start down, the left hip works back and around. Same sort of thing with the idea of if we can free up some movement during the backswing, it's going to be easier to set that reaction during the downswing. I don't want your left hip to just stay here and you to turn against it and then rotate. I want your left hip working in and then your left hip working back out. So this would be feel number two, left hip in, left hip out. And that would, again, ideally create more hip rotation. Once again, you're checking this with feedback, same sort of thing. So instead of right hip back, we're thinking left hip in, left hip back behind us. Let's go ahead and start that. And with that, sort of the same thing of, you really want to feel those hip motions creating the motion. So when we talk about the right hip back or the left hip in, you more or less want to feel that as the starting movement to your backswing. And then to increase the downswing, we know it's a race between our arms, hands, and club and body. And if we want more body rotation, you also want to feel that left hip is the starter to the downswing. So the left hip in starts back, left hip out starts your downswing. Different feel that can help accomplish the same thing. Okay, feel number three, we're going to stay on the left side now, but we're going to talk about the knee motion. Now, how your left leg as a whole or how your knee moves, what we're going to focus on, can help dictate how much rotation you get. So your left leg works in two primary functions. You can increase the bend in your leg or you can straighten your leg. So there's bend or flex and extension. And there's also internal rotation, which is your left knee working in towards your right. And there's external rotation. Now, what I want to focus on in this video is the internal and external rotation pieces, not so much the bend that we have in some other videos. So if I wanted to increase overall hip rotation, what would I do with my legs? Well, the direction your knee moves, internal or external, the direction that moves is going to help rotation in that direction. Meaning, when I make a backswing, if I want to add more hip turn, the more my left knee works in towards my right, within reason, will help free up pelvis motion or rotation. Now the same thing is true. The more my left knee and leg work out around towards the target on the downswing, the more that frees up my pelvis motion and hip rotation during the downswing. So if I want more hip motion, I also can have more knee motion. That is, instead of feeling right hip or left hip, I can feel my left knee works in during the backswing and then it works out to start the downswing. Again, thinking about these as the driver or the engine of the motion. You're going to be feeling the left knee works in to start back, and then immediately the left knee works out to start down. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. This is just a different feel. Feel number three, designed to do the same thing. Left knee in, left knee out. Good. And again, I'm checking that with video to confirm whether or not I'm actually increasing rotation there. And when I'm checking the video, I'm saying, hey, do I need to do this earlier? Do I need to do it more? Do I need to adjust how I'm doing it and give yourself feedback again so you're not guessing? So same sort of thing here. Left knee works in, going back to start. Left knee out, coming down. And that can help increase overall rotation as well. So one more little feel here, and then we'll have all of our 4 feels for more hip rotation. Okay, feel number 4 for more hip rotation is all about how the left foot work. Now, I want to preface this with how your left foot work is really and should be primarily dictated by the pieces we just mentioned. That means if you do get your right hip working back and then working down and through towards the target, if you do get your left hip working in and then working out, if you do get your left knee in and out. A lot of the foot motion probably will take care of itself, but you can also reverse engineer some things. So let's talk about the foot motion. This works very much like the knee motion we just mentioned, and that is the direction. If the knee goes in, helps pelvis rotation. If the knee goes out, helps pelvis rotation on the way back. I can also lift my left heel. Now, the foot really works in a bunch of different motions. There's different things here, but really what I want to talk about is specifically the left heel. And that part is relatively simple, which is if I lift my left heel as I work back, easier to increase pelvis rotation. And then on the way down, that sets me up for a reaction where I can plant my left heel as my knee goes out for rotation. This is something for a lot of people I turn into a simple two-step feel, which would be during the backswing, make your left knee come in, left heel up to start going back. And then as you start down, make your left knee work out and your left heel down to start down. It's really just a little two-step feel there. Left knee in, left heel up, left knee out, left heel down, and those again being the drivers of the motion. So let's go ahead and set that feel up. I'm gonna put those together. Left knee in, left heel up, left knee out, left heel down. And your goal when you're trying to increase the overall rotation, one more time, is that you're trying to have that start the motion really before the arms and hands have a chance to fire through if I'm trying to increase that rotation. So left knee in, left heel up, going back, and then the opposite coming down. So those would be the four primary feels I would look for more hip rotation. Obviously there's a lot of different drills there, but always provide yourself feedback with this. I would recommend via video. Again, you can check out cogornogolf.com and see what resides on there, and I can help you through it. But give yourself feedback for these. Do these feels, exaggerate accordingly. They will help you with more hip rotation, which will in turn help you hit the ball better. Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you liked the video, please do us a favor, click the like button down below. Click the notification bell. Also, please subscribe if you haven't. Another reminder, every Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are live here on YouTube for Rapid Fire Golf. We'd love to see you guys there with your questions. Thanks, guys.